Hey, what is up, guys? It's me, King Blake, and today we're coming back with boss fight tips. Now, what boss fight is, it's 3 people against one CPU, which is a robot, a very big robot. And what his main attacks are, a swipe, which deals a good amount of damage, some laser beams, as you can see in the video, and rockets, got missiles, which will shoot out and be similar to meteors, as in the radius they show before actually hitting, and finally dashing. Now, I'm in Insane 2 and haven't been able to get past it. I've been really close, but I haven't been able to mostly because of just the incapability to take him out within the time. We get him really low, but by the time you hit 5 minutes in Insane 2, he deals way too much damage and is way too quick for you to deal any sort of damage to him. So I've just compiled some tips from playing, and so what I found out that is as soon as the game starts, you want to deal as much damage as possible, because he's in his most vulnerable state, because he doesn't nearly do as much damage as possible. Also, what you want to do, you want to give the power cubes to the ranged characters such as Pam, Colt, or any ranged character, because what happens is you might think that Primo or Bull would be good to have them because it will give them more health, but in reality, once you get to 3 minutes, Bulls and Primos will just get completely beat up if they're anywhere near the boss. So you want to be, if you're playing a ranged character, you kind of want to be a little bit selfish and get those power cubes, because Colt that can do 600 damage from range and always be dealing that damage while running away, unlike a Primo who would be just taking the damage but not being able to give the damage off. That's why you would want to give it to the ranged characters. Also, when you respawn, you don't want to run away. At least you want to get especially late game. Like, as long as you have one guy alive, if you respawn, you just want to stick right by especially if you're close range as well. You want to be as close by to the robot boss as possible. You want to use all of those 3 seconds of immunity, however long it is, to get as much damage, because that could be the difference between actually killing the boss and not. Now, I've played quite a few games, and probably too many, but I've compiled a sort of list of who you want to play as and who you do not want to play as. Now, the definite, I'd say, person you need in your team comp is Pam. If you can get her max, that would be optimal. But even as not max, she, with her healing turret, provides healing to your teammates, and she has an extremely high DPS, which can be used to take down the boss and she's also pretty rangy. As well, as you can see, there's there's 3 different ways of a boss. There's angry, furious, and enraged. Now, if you get to enraged, it's nearly impossible to do any damage to him. As you can see, that was only furious, I believe, and he did that much damage to me. Now, so Pam's very good. Also, another person who's really good, as you can see, who to use. Colt, I feel like the best tank is Primo and Shelly, because they can all, especially the Primo and Shelly, can use their supers to prevent the laser beams from happening. Colt's just all around good. He has good DPS. He can shoot from range and not take any damage. Pam, as I just said, really good, very good at healing. Now, not to use. You don't want to use any low DPS brawlers, such as Brock, Poco Piper, Bo, and Mortis. Mortis is not good. You don't want to use him. Piper just doesn't have enough reload speed. Now, Nita and Jesse, you could use. I wouldn't recommend. Their DPS is pretty low, but the bear and the turret can be used for good distraction. Brocky has good match output, just doesn't have reload speed to back that up. And same with Bo. His supers, you think, would be able to stop the laser beams from walking on, but it doesn't work because Bo just doesn't have the damage output that other brawlers. I mean, you could, but there's just other brawlers you could use that would be much better. Now, when I was with this Frank is meh. You could use him. I just wouldn't recommend. There's, as I said, better options. Now, Colt and Pam, you probably want them in your team comp. And as you can see, one of our teammates went down. And if your teammates go down within the first boss, you basically lose, because you need that first boss is the boss that you need to be paying the most attention to. You need to be dealing the most damage to, because he's the least threat of a boss. And as you can see, that was really bad job by me when I was trying to strafe. I stuttered, and that ended up costing us probably the game, to be honest. So we're just gonna cut to the next game, because when the lasers shoot, if you're looking at it right to left, so what you want to do, you want to strafe right to left. I mean, no. If you're quick enough, and if you're on the outskirts, you can strafe left. But if you're in the middle of a shot, you want to strafe right to take the least amount of damage. Because if you strafe left and you're in the middle of the shots, you'll just get hit by all of them. Instead, if you were to strafe right, you'd only get hit by one or two. Now, the earlier forms of the boss only have, I mean, his lasers don't actually break walls. So you can also just hide behind some walls and kind of like peek out from walls to not take damage. But also, it goes with that. So in the early game, you want to try to destroy as least amount of walls as possible, because the walls are basically your way to live, because they will protect you. And as you can see, it also protects you from the little robots as well. You can just hide behind. Now, when the boss does break a bunch of, because the the robot boss does break a lot of, basically breaks the whole map. And even though the terrain can be kind of bad for you at sometimes, like if there's a rocket shooting at you and you're trapped between two walls, that's bad. But generally, it's really good, because as you can see, that Shelly just completely baited the boss and took him for a spin around, as she was able to get a heal. Now, my general rule for when I'm doing this boss fight for Insane 2 is, if I don't have him below 65% before he turns angry, or 70%, 70% is probably the maximum, you're probably not going to be able to win that game. There's just not enough time, and there's just not enough time for you to beat the boss, because you'll either die before that. And that's why, also, going back to the points made earlier, that if you are a ranged character, you should be getting the power cubes, because you'll be alive longer, probably. Because if you can just have the tanks respawning and basically just like dealing as much damage as possible and tanking for you, is much better, because you're least likely about to die. Even though you don't have as much health as them, such as if you were a Colt or Pam or even Rico, you'll still be doing more damage than they would be doing, only because you're from range. And as long as he doesn't charge at you, but you can generally figure out when he's charging or when he's not, and be able to react in time, and then you will be able to deal much more damage, because a max Colt with, I believe, like only four power cubes only deals like, I mean, not only deals like 536 damage per bullet. And Colt, I think he sends around like not six, I think like 8 to 10 bullets, and that's like, I don't know, 5,000 damage per shot. Not 5,000, that's probably not right. 500, yeah. No, 5,000. I don't know, somewhere pretty high damage. And if you can stay alive, especially with his star power, which lets you run faster, you'll be in a much better position than if you were to let the tanks keep the power cubes. As you can see, the people are just respawning and running away. And so once you get to this point where you're just barely surviving, there's no way you can win. And since there's no reward for lasting as long, you might as well just give up because there's really no chance of you dealing 24% damage to that boss at that time. And yeah, Shelly's trying to dodge all the constant barrage of missiles, but it's impossible. And yeah, because the reward is not for how long you survive, it's for how quickly you kill. So you have to keep that in mind. So you have to have a certain amount of aggressiveness and not being a certain amount of aggressiveness, but not being too aggressive at the same time. And this is where I believe we go down because, well, because it's just a Leon. And although Leon's pretty good, he's probably one of the best brawlers in the game, if not the best brawler in the game. The fact is, his super, you really want a proactive super that'll either help you or your team. And although Leon, you can escape with his super, it's not as good because, as I said before, it's to be, you want to kill, not survive. I mean, you want to survive, but yeah, you don't want. Now he's enraged. This is basically GG's in the chat because there's no way we can possibly deal. His speed is tremendous. His shots are basically a 180-degree from your left to your right. So if you're anywhere and the shot's extremely rangy, so people are just trying to survive. We do end up getting it close. We get them to like 15%, but that's basically all that's gonna happen because I'm gonna respawn, but I'm in such a bad position. I'm cornered everywhere, and there's just constant. Yeah, look at that. Like it's huge. It goes like 15 tiles or something, and I'm in his range. I die. Leon gets to survive, but he won't last long. And then I guess the Shelly survives, but yeah, 13%, not too bad, but the boss has an extreme range at that point, so it's really not that good. Okay, guys, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe and turn notifications on. Peace.